Hello there and welcome. This special broadcast is reaching you from Apex One Radio. But exceptionally, we are not in the studio in Columbus, Ohio. We are streaming live from Phoenix in Arizona. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ernest Kanjo and welcome on board. It's exactly 8 minutes past 7 Central Time, uh, which should be 8 minutes past 10 Eastern time. Once again, thank you so much and welcome. Now, according to the Committee for Protect Journalists, CPJ, 361 journalists were imprisoned globally as of December the 1st, 2024, marking the second highest number of journalists imprisoned since CPJ began tracking in 1992. Reporters Without Borders reported that 547 journalists were detained at the start of last year, with 779 of them having been jailed at some point during 2023. The leading jailers of journalists include countries like China, Belarus, and Vietnam, collectively responsible for nearly half of the global imprisoned journalists. Now, let's narrow it down to Africa. And in sub Saharan Africa, the number of journalists jailed rose to 47 by December the 1st, 2023, up from 31 in 2022. The countries with the highest number of imprisoned journalists in the region were Eritrea, known for some of the longest standing cases of imprisoned journalists, with detainees often held without charge. That is according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. The committee also talks about Ethiopia, that held 8 journalists as of December the 1st, 2023, amid ongoing conflict and political instability in that country. Cameroon is also known as one of the countries with this record of jailing journalists. And Cameroon is known to have jailed a couple of journalists as well. So, other notable countries include China, as we've mentioned before, Israel, Russia, Vietnam. Approximately 60% of imprisoned journalists face anti state charges, such as false news and terrorism, often used to suppress dissent, reports the Committee to Protect Journalists. Many journalists are detained without formal charges or trials, and some of them endure harsh prison conditions without adequate medical care. And notably, 57 journalists are serving sentences exceeding 10 years, reflecting the severity of crackdowns on press freedom. Well, these are just some of the statistics, and as time goes on, things do change. Whether the jailing of journalists is increasing or decreasing is what we are definitely going to look into. But for now, let's work with these statistics and see where we head to at this point. Once again, thank you so much. Welcome. My name is Ernest Kanjo. This streaming is taking place under the banner of Apex One Radio. We are in Arizona, in the southern regions of the United States of America. Well, to talk about World Press Freedom Day and just what threats do journalists of today face, we have some professionals who are joining us here. They are not strange people to Apex One Radio, including Deba Uwadiae, who is a seasoned journalist, having been in the profession for so long. Deba happens to be the publisher and editor-in-chief of the leading news publication in the immigrant community in Central Ohio. We're talking about the New Americans magazine. Deba, good evening and welcome to the show. How are you today? You have to unmute yourself so we can hear you, Deba.
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me.
Happy World Press Freedom Day.
You too.
Let me just ask you this question, Deba. Are you free as a journalist?
Well, comparatively or relatively, I would say in this environment, I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
I'm free in terms of being able to report my story, being able to publish stories, without fear of being sanctioned, and also being able to get stories that I want, that I want to publish without hindrance. That's for me, as a journalist here in Columbus, Ohio. But I can't say for everyone, and I've been reading, what is going on all over the world. I know that a lot of journalists are not, as free as I am, and also for what has been happening here in the United States, where even the public radio, the public radio station, the public media is being threatened with defunding by the federal government. So if we have to talk about that, then you put everybody together, all journalists together, then you realize that journalists are really not, free in practicing journalism.
Somebody said that freedom of the press is relative, whatever that means. But what I learned from your introductory statements, Deba, is that accessibility to information is also freedom of the press. We'll talk about that. A much more younger professional is Danlette Washington, but she has spent some years, reasonable years in the profession as well. She has grown in it, and she has her own experiences. She too, has used her pen and has used her voice. But how free she is what we learn from her. Danlette, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you. I'm doing well, and I'm glad to be
Right.
here.
And so today is World Press Freedom Day. I know you've practiced journalism for many years, despite the fact that you are still young. But if you were asked this direct question as a journalist, do you feel that you are free to express yourself?
The
And you
word
may
for
have to check. You may have to check your sound. Go ahead.
yes, I think I'm free to report the story as it is, as far as the environment that I'm in and the work that I do. I haven't been censored or been stopped or been limited in any way by anyone. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll come back to you, Danlette Washington. Also joining us is Taiwo Akinlami. Taiwo is a writer par excellence. He is a columnist. He has contributed to the print media back in Nigeria and here in the United States of America. He's done that for so long, so he has exercised the profession of journalism. Freedom of the press even extends to the book industry. Taiwo, good evening and welcome to the program. You may have to unmute yourself, Taiwo. Good evening and welcome to the
Thank you
program.
so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Taiwo, I know that a whole lot of writers, especially in Nigeria, had also practiced journalism. I'm thinking of Chinua Achebe, who used to be a broadcaster. Then became a venerated writer. Writers too do face challenges and threats, right? So you have written in columns in newspapers and magazines over the years. And today, would you say that you have been free or you've had a free hand doing this over the years. Are you a free writer, Taiwo?
Well, I think that I will position my response against the backdrop that when we talk about free press today, we cannot but talk about the democratization of the platforms of dissemination of news. When you talk about journalism, before now, it is that platforms are exclusive to those who are trained in journalism to express themselves. But today, all you need to exercise your freedom of speech is just a Facebook account, a YouTube account, a Instagram account, a TikTok account, a LinkedIn account, and some data and a phone. You are already out there expressing your views, right? And so
Yes.
that has changed the dynamics as to when we talk about freedom of speech. For me, in December, a very close friend of mine, we went to school together. He was the president of the student union. I was the director of welfare. And since then, we've been close. We've known for close to 30 years. He wrote a book titled Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System, criticizing the judicial system and the impact of the judiciary on the impact of the Nigerian state on the judiciary. And it was weak stuff. He was arrested, right? Arrested, charged for a criminal offense in a state where what he was accused of doing was not an offense. His name is Deba. He was arrested. And so I went for all the days he was arrested. I was on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn campaigning for his release. And my sister called me, from Nigeria and said, brother, are you planning to come home any soon? I said, if I need to come, I will come home. He said, are you not afraid you could be picked up at the airport because your activism is too much? I mean, you are in the forefront of this campaign. I said, well, that should not be the reason why I should not speak my truth. That should not be the reason why I should not speak the truth of my conscience. I'm completely involved in what is going on in my country, Nigeria. Almost every day, things are going on, and I write my opinion. Today I've written about the arrest of the very dark man. I'm not a fan of the very dark man, right? But he's expressing his freedom of speech. If he has done anything wrong, charge him to a court. You don't just pick him up, blindfold him, and whisk him away. And the government is not talking to anybody, right? And so for me, I feel endangered. I need to watch over my shoulders when I go to Nigeria. These days, I've been very vocal. I've been very vociferous about my views about the state of our nation. Last week, I was writing about the fact that the Nigerian government says that they want to spend 100 billion on solar power, alternative power, renewable energy. That 100 billion is going to federal parastatals. These federal parastatals, 86 of them are owing PACN 46 billion naira that they have not paid. These are the same people who don't want to move to solar power. And guess what? 10 billion of the solar power is going to be in Aso Rock. These are recurring capital, recurring expenditure. None of them is going into investment. They are not empowering small businesses. They are not empowering people who really need power. Companies are moving out of Nigeria in droves, moving to Ghana, moving to where power is stable. Government is releasing 100 billion in according to a national policy. Instead of them to think about capitalization or recapitalization, they are putting all the 100 billion in recurrent expenditure. So for me, I commented about that last week, right? And for me, it's not about whether I'm free or not. It's about whether I want to speak the truth of my conscience. And my motivation is always this. I'm 55 years old. If at this age now, I cannot speak the truth of my conscience because I'm afraid somebody is going to pick me up, then I failed. So I speak the truth of my conscience regardless. If I have to go to Nigeria, I go to Nigeria. If I'm picked up, it doesn't change anything. If I'm picked up, definitely I'll be released. If I'm not released, then so be it. So for me, freedom of the press is critical. We have to keep talking about it. But for me, whether Nigeria, you know what has happened? Free speech has been criminalized. My friend was picked up in Lagos, traveled through 5 states. Police did not respect any protocol. Went to dump him in Ekiti State, where the man who claimed they accused him has power. They thought he has power. There's a musician in Nigeria called Portable. That guy was picked up in Ogun State. They drove him to Kwara State to go and shave him and lock him up because he made a comment about a musician called Oshupa Saidi. Now, there's a guy called Easy T, is a producer, has a problem with Mercy Chinwe, who he managed. What happened was that they picked him up from Abuja, took him to Ilorin to go and deal with him there. So you see all of these things happening. It's dark days ahead for free speech.
Hopefully, the days become brighter and not dark, but freedom of speech and of the press is critical, and we must keep talking about that, especially in the current context. And it is even more complex because we have what we call the new media, social media, than the mainstream media. And I was just wondering why journalists should still be a threat when there is the new media. But I'm just going to say good evening to the next guest. Of course, the last to be introduced, Okon Ekpenyong. Okon is also a journalist, but tilted more towards photojournalism. So I would like to use him on this show as a photojournalist. Okon, good evening and welcome. How are you today?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Ernest, for having me. Appreciate it.
One of the biggest threats we have around is people who are seen camera in hand, and this scene kinds of scare a lot of people, especially the ones who have things to hide in their cupboards. Do you ever have a situation where you move around with your camera and people around you are not very comfortable, and someone even has or takes the courage to elbow you and say, please stay behind and so on, and you feel that your presence is making people uncomfortable? Do you ever have that feeling sometimes when you move around covering, especially with camera in hand?
Yes, when I'm covering like a local event, um, obviously, family sometimes don't want to be on air or even have their pictures taken, but majority of the things that I do cover are national, like basketball or soccer. So those things where press are normally allowed to have their photograph, to use their photograph and take photos or whatever. But in most local events, some people are a little bit more reserved, and obviously making sure they know who I am first before I can take the photos. But just kind of reminding them this is strictly for news reasons and nothing else. But one of the things I've learned to always ask if it's okay, and tell them properly, identify who I am. And once I
Mhm.
do that, then in- obviously the conversation would change, or they will either say yes, it's okay to use my photos, or no, it's not. But once I'm able to profile or identify who I am precisely, usually things go well after that.
Okay, you just mentioned identification, which I think is a very salient point, and I would like us to talk about that before we dive deep into the conversation. And I'll bring Deba here to find out. I know that Deba, one of the things which we move around with as journalists to help us access information is the press badge. I know newsrooms have individual badges. Some press associations issue badges to their members. There are some organizations would issue accreditations to journalists so they can have access to information. Do you always feel more comfortable when you wear a badge that identifies you as a journalist, or have you ever worn a badge and somebody still did not want to recognize you as a journalist? Deba, you have to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you.
Sorry. uh, yeah, especially for people who might, no matter where you are, if you are in the minority group, it is advisable for you to put on your badge, your press badge, because people will always challenge you if you don't have your badge. When you come into certain environment to cover stories, especially where they don't know you. If you are not the television guy that they always see on television, and so when you visit or you are covering certain events and they see you being from the minority, they always feel that it's kind of natural for them. They always believe that it is not possible, for that minority person to, or journalist from the minority group to cover big events, especially. And so I've had experience, especially when I don't put on my badge. They will always come and ask, are you a journalist? Or excuse me, can I know you? So it's an experience, something I experience, especially when I'm covering events outside the state house. If it has to do with covering government officials, I've experienced a lot of that. In the state house, yes, I'm known, and so I can cover events. But if, for example, the governor is having an event outside the state house, a lot of times people have come to me to ask, "Are you a journalist?" And sometimes it could be embarrassing. Sometimes because I know about it, I just take it. And but if I'm hanging my badge, they don't usually come to me. But I don't hang my badge because others don't hang their badge. So why should, if they can't ask others, if they are journalists, why should they ask me if I'm a journalist? So but for one to avoid issues like that when you are outside the environment where they don't know you, I think it's advisable to just wear your badge. So that's what I would say about that. Either your office badge or the if it's big events where they accredit journalists, wear your badge. Just put on your badge.
Okay, let me bring in Okon here, and we will benefit from his presence here to learn something. Okon, we are told, I don't know, rightfully or wrongfully, that as a photojournalist, you have the right to film whatever you want to, so long as it is in the public sphere. But a while ago, you said many times you would need to obtain permission from people if you can use their images. Am I getting something wrong here?
So, for example, for NCAA, NCAA, which is a collision level, like college basketball or college football, there's some time that you cannot film. So they will give you a credentials, informational breakdown of when it's advisable to film and when not to, right? Because we don't have rights, broadcast rights to cover some events. So um, I can do an interview after the game, but not doing. So it comes down to having broadcast rights. So therefore, you have to read that fine print when you get credentials to cover anything, right? Because we are not, for example, ABC, ESPN, and so we don't have rights. We're not going to be able to air that broadcast or whatever it is. So therefore, um, there's some restrictions that I have to abide by based on the guidelines that I'm giving. So again, proper identification, like Mr. Deba said, is because of a minority. they don't know who you are. So therefore, you have to properly identify yourself and make sure whatever badge that you do have is always visible. And that's one thing that I've learned covering from covering a national, like a college basketball, or maybe early this year I went to a national retail foundation. They've never met me before. That was my very first time. So I always make sure that, my identification is out and display. What I do, what I say, the question that I ask, because the people are always looking at you. The people that granted you the credentials are always going to look at you. They're going to look at what you wrote, what you
Mhm.
published, the question you ask. That would determine whether or not they will bring you back for next year. So that's one thing I've learned. There's
Mm.
a freedom of press, but the good thing about us is we are catered to everybody, but there's also a certain genre that we connect. We try to connect with our audience, so that makes me, for example, not focus on the controversial topics.
Mm. If you are just joining us, you are listening and watching a live edition of Apex Snapshots. And today we are focusing on press freedom as journalists in the United States of America join their counterparts the world over to commemorate World Press Freedom Day. And it is coming at a time when we are still talking about journalists being imprisoned, journalists being arrested, or journalists not having that freedom to access information and report it with free hands. But then there is a lot of progress being made as time goes on. Taiwo, I want to bring you back and find out from you what exactly you think freedom of press entails. When we talk about freedom of press, what do we mean by that, according to you? I don't know if Taiwo can hear me. Taiwo, did you get the
Hear
question?
you. I can hear you. I practiced law in Nigeria from 1999 to date. I practiced law in Nigeria, and I look at freedom of the press from the perspective of the Constitution. The
Mhm.
right to speak your mind, to express your mind, is enshrined in Chapter 4 of the Constitution of
Mhm.
Nigeria. That is fundamental human rights. Now, this is in accordance with global treaties, human rights treaties, that gives you the ability to speak your mind. Not only that, in Nigeria, the freedom of the press is also specially enshrined in the Constitution. Chapter 2 of the Constitution of Nigeria makes it abundantly clear that the press has a responsibility to hold government accountable, right?
Mhm.
Because see, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of Nigeria declares the objective and purpose of state. Now, that Chapter 2 of the Constitution of Nigeria talks about the right of people to healthcare, the right of people to education from cradle to university, speaks about a whole lot of things. Now, this Chapter 2 of the Constitution of Nigeria is not justiciable. You cannot take the government to court on it. That's why they say it's not justiciable. It can only be litigated in the court of public opinion. Now, the press is now given that responsibility to hold government accountable according to the objectives of this constitution, which are some of the things that I've spoken about here. So that becomes the responsibility of the press to hold up the banner, to insist, to ask critical questions, to hold government accountable, right? So that is my view. And there's a reason why the press is referred to as the fourth estate of the realm, which means that in the hierarchy of governance, the press is the fourth estate, right? It holds government accountable. Now, the press is not elected, but the press is the voice of the people. It holds the elected people accountable. They are called the watchdog, to ensure that when you hold yourself out as a government and you hold yourself out as a public person, you can be asked questions. Today I wrote an article because there's a major issue going on in Nigeria is this issue of a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria accusing the Senate president of sexual harassment. Now, before now, I've done a YouTube broadcast where I was saying that, well, if the woman says the Senate president has sexually harassed her, in law, you as SAT must prove it. Now, I also said that the Senate president is innocent until proven guilty, but the person who has accused the Senate president also must be supported to establish our truth. But this is where I'm going. So yesterday, there's another professor who came to say that she had a private conversation with the one who accused, with Senator Natasha, who accused the Senate president, to say that the Natasha confided in her that there was no harassment, it was a political gimmick. And this woman in her own broadcast said that she has never met the Senate president, she doesn't know the Senate president. But in her own broadcast, as she was showing us a video, a call log, we saw 2 calls, one missed call, one actual call from the Senate president, whom she claims she has never met, she doesn't know. So today I wrote a piece. I said, well, I'm not on the side of Natasha, I'm not on the side of Mbeke. That's the lady who came out, Professor Mbeke. I said, but we as citizens, we must ask questions. We must ask questions. And what are the questions we are supposed to ask? Madam, so we need to ask Senator Natasha question, because she said she never knew this woman. This woman has come out to say, you knew me, you called me. Now, this woman also now, who have said that she has never met the Senate president, she doesn't know Senate president, by her own admission, the call she was showing us, we saw 2 calls from the Senate president. Now, these are things I think citizens should be interested in. But you know what has happened, Ernest? What has happened is that the blind followers of Natasha are not going to ask questions. The blind followers of Mbeke are not going to ask questions. But I'm a liberal follower. I follow principles. So I'm able to say, no, let's take a look at this thing critically. Don't be a cheapish follower of anybody. Ask questions. And I think that is what the freedom of the press means. Ability of the people to have to ask intelligent questions, right? I've attended programs with Mr. Deba Uwadiae, I wanted to say the commander-in-chief of New American Magazine, the editor-in-chief, the publisher. And I see him taking up public, he speaks gently and softly, but he asks critical questions on behalf of the community he represents. That is the freedom of the press, ability to engage government. Why do people keep reading the newspaper? The people keep reading the New American Magazine because it represents the people. It has the heartbeat, it understands the heartbeat of the people. And when he attends programs with government functionaries, he's able to ask critical questions that crystallizes the fear, the opportunities, the commitment, the aspirations, the yearnings of the people. And so when the people read those things, they're able to say, yes, this man, though we were not there, we could not make it. We were busy in the factory, we were busy in the offices, we were busy in the law court, we were busy in different places. This man, whom we did not elect, has done his work to a point that is recognized by government, invited to be able to participate in their programs, and he has been able to ask them the questions we will want to ask in our hearts. And so they see him as their representative, though never elected. But I think it might be
Though never elected, journalists are considered as representatives of
the people, yes.
their people, and that is their role. Of course, some even describe them as the voice of the voiceless. Danlette Washington, let me come back to you. Taiwo mentioned that journalists have the responsibility not only to play the watchdog role, but to ask very critical questions, especially to those who govern the people. But I want to find out from you if at some point you also think that it is not every direction journalists must take. Do you think that there are topics or there are issues which should be considered as a no-go zone for journalists, or because press freedom should exist, journalists should cover and report just anything? do you think that journalists should mind where they're going to, or should create limitations and not touch every single corner? Go ahead. Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
I think there are limitations, and journalists, we have that social responsibility to be able to inform the public and educate the public about certain things. But there should be certain lines that should be drawn. And I always say, before I become a journalist, I'm a human being first. So for me, is certain human interest stories, no certain, especially if you're in, like Okon was saying, if you're in a local area and there are people locally, there are certain stories where you just don't carry, or you just don't take pictures. Certain places you have to respect, the privacy of the environment that you're in. And one thing that annoys me with certain journalists or with social media is where, if there's a car accident, or if there is, let's say, a rape victim, you do not show the face of that victim. Maybe you can show the perpetrator, you can just do the story, but you cannot take pictures of the victim, because sometimes they will probably get shamed or something. And so I think there are limitations in us as journalists. We have that social responsibility to just judge what stories to carry and what to write on.
That's beautiful. I will stay with you before I go to Deba, who mentioned earlier that accessibility to information is part of press freedom. So we have also observed that within the past couple of years, especially on the continent, there has been a plethora of news organizations coming up. When you go to newsstands in virtually every country, there are countless tabloids, so many newspapers, so many magazines. Then radio stations are spread all over the place, so many TV stations. Does that account to what we describe as press freedom? I'm talking about the plethora of radio stations, TV stations, and newspapers. Could we use that as a measuring rod for press freedom?
That, like I say, any and everybody can get into the media. So that would be press freedom, as long as one has the ability to freely speak their minds, and knowing that there are certain things you would say that would require consequences. Then you just watch what you report and what you write about and what you speak about.
Mhm. I'm asking that question. And I'll turn to Deba now, because in some countries, governments pride themselves with press freedom by saying that they have allowed the creation of newspapers, radio stations, TV stations. So that to them is press freedom. Even when the journalists or the media executive who create these news outlets may not be free per se to report their stories, but just the fact that they are allowed to function or to operate, governments describe that as press freedom. Deba, do you think that the fact that we have so many news organizations existing, is that press freedom per se?
Well, business and press freedom, they are different things. Somebody establishing a publishing house, somebody establishing a broadcasting house is a businessman. And so we can say that the government will want to say, oh, yes, we allow a lot of publishing houses to be there. Now, if you go to the newsstand, you see a lot of newspapers. Even in Nigeria, if you go to the newsstand, before I left Nigeria, there are the newspapers that I knew then, some of them are no longer there, but many of them are still there. But when you go now, you see new, publications, new newspapers, all of them, on the stand, so many like that. So the fact that you are having those publications is just about economy, it's about business, It means that, the business of publishing is doing well, so to say, in quote. And so the government will want to take credit for that. But the thing is, what about the content that you have in these publications? How do people in government react to them? And how do they see, these publications? And you must also realize that journalism, is also has its own fault, in the sense that, publications take sides. There are publications that will tell you, we are conservatives. There are publications that will tell you we are liberals. There are publications that will tell you that, they are in the middle. And so even in journalism, you have that. So when Danlette was talking about, limitations, so you will even find out that journalists also limit themselves, to a certain extent. But the fact that you have so many publications in certain places does not mean that, there is freedom, of the press there. It just means that, the business of media, is doing well, and that is why you can have so many publications. If you look at Columbus, Columbus, for example, when I came in Columbus, when I came to Columbus in 2011, we had like 2 or 3 daily publications. But before the end of that year, it became 1 daily publication. Then the other year, then there were some weekend publications. At the 3rd or 4th year, there was no longer weekend publications, And so in that kind of scenario, you only have 1 daily publication in Columbus, 1 daily, and that is the Columbus Dispatch. So are you going to say because we have only 1 publication after the rest have rested, that there is no freedom of, press here in Columbus? So what I'm trying to say is that the fact that you have so many publications in some places does not mean that it relates to freedom of the press. What it means is that you have a lot of them, then business is doing well because they are owned by businessmen. The businessmen, they want to make profit. They didn't set it up for charitable purposes. They set it up to make money. And so that is why you see a lot of problems when certain content, don't meet the style or the requirement of the owner of that publication.
Okay, quickly, gentlemen and lady, I would like us to talk about this. Deba just mentioned the fact that publications pick their directions and head towards them. There are publications that will tell you they are conservatives. Others will tell you their hearts beat more towards the liberals, and so on. Quickly and briefly, maybe 30 seconds each. Do media outfits have to identify with particular political orientations? Quickly, let me begin with Deba.
Yeah, while in school, I was taught that no, you don't have to do that. While I was in school, you know, so journalism school would tell you you don't have to belong to any, that you are supposed to be neutral because you
Mhm,
are reporting, every side,
mhm,
and you are expected to report every side, and so you kind of represent, you know, you represent every side in your story, and not representing a certain um, leaning, especially when it comes to political leaning.
okay.
That is how it's supposed to be, in school.
Mm,
But when we came out of school, we started, seeing, especially when different states that started in Nigeria, for example, when different states started having their own publication, their own broadcasting station, their own television, their own radio, then we started noticing that they report things that favor uh, the government that established, you know, the the broadcasting station, radio station, television station, and so
mhm.
things change.
Okay. Okon, like Deba said, in the classroom, we are taught that journalism has to propel neutrality by all costs. But it is becoming a normalcy that media outfits are taking sides and they're doing that shamelessly. And at some point, I am afraid it may just become normal that you create your media outfit and you say you are supporting uh, this political ideology. So, what is going on, Ocon? Is this normal?
So every journalist starting out, they normally like Tucker Carlson, for example. He started out in uh, I think NBC or local news. And then eventually, when you establish yourself, you go to the station that fits your agenda. So, but in when I went to school for TV and radio, I was taught to just report the news like they're like a PBS and NPR kind of style. It was never controversial. It was just like, okay, what happened? Like the five whys. What happened? Where? When? And how? You know, uh, I've always been. I was taught to leave opinions out of a story,
Mhm.
just tell it like it is. But eventually, like I said, most journalists, when you establish yourself, you can either start your own production or publishing company, or go to Fox News or Newscast or Newsmax, where it aligns with your agenda. And I think just now in the White House is like that. If there's I know there was a recent one of the news journalists from ABC that just had access um, to interview Trump. So he was sort of fact checking some of the Trump claims or executive order, but Trump was kind of launching out a little bit at him, and sometimes that's what journalism is we still have people that believe in fact checking, right? So,
Mhm.
but based on what I've learned from Mr. Deba and the rest of it is the ability to just tell a story as it is, right? And the biggest thing for me is I can create my own story. It's not something I'm being, obviously there are times where I'm sent on a particular assignment, but at the end of the day, even in the press conference, everything that I ask, it's somewhat related to the reason why we're there, and also related to our community as well, the minority community. So you're right. Um, I mean, I could go it the liberal way or the conservative way, but at the end of the day, I think my approach is just tell the story as it is. If I
Just
have an opinion, I'll probably say it.
just tell the story as it is. Taiwo, in school, I was educated that journalists should only report and leave their opinions out of the story. In fact, journalists do not own any opinion. But again, today, what we're observing is completely different. we see journalists who shamelessly take sides and are injecting their opinions into stories. Now, I'm tempted to describe them as propagandists and not journalists. Would I be right if I described journalists as such, especially the ones
Well,
whom see taking sides?
well, I don't think there's any human being without opinion, and I
Okay.
think that it is difficult for you to remove your opinion from you when you are doing anything.
Mm.
It is important to know that those who taught that in journalism are not realists, in my opinion. Now, go to my
Okay.
country, Nigeria. I was born in 1970. I grew up on newspapers like Tribune newspaper, owned by a political party. I'm talking about leading newspapers in Nigeria. I grew up on Daily Times. Daily Times was a government paper, right?
Mm.
It will report government position. Tribune will report the ideology of United Parties of Party of Nigeria, that's UPN. National Concord was a party started by MK Abiola, who was an MPN man. It will report the views of the ruling party, the National Party of Nigeria, that's MPN. Then you have Observer. That is in that paper emanated from Edo State, if I'm correct. Then you have Sketch. Now, there's the press they call the Ingbati Press, the Lagos Ibadan Press. Now, most of those press houses, apart from Concord, were the people in Nigeria that you call the liberals, right? So the same people who were working in all of those places. Now, in Lagos, you had Lagos News in the evenings, and evening news owned by Lateef Jakonde, who was the former governor of Lagos State and who was a UPN man. So you find that there is later years you found newspapers like Vanguard, where Mr. Deba worked. You find Republic, but one way or the other, there is a leaning here and there, right? So at the end of the day, and that's what you also find in the US. When I'm watching the same news report on Fox News, I'll just tune to CNN, the same report, the same event. You see different reportage. Why? Because of political leaning. The liberals are guilty of it. The conservatives are guilty of it. The centrists are guilty of it. Everybody reports according to their own biases to a very large extent. Because the person who set up the newspaper is paying for that. He doesn't expect you now. Now, in Nigeria today, you have a newspaper, you have TVC. TVC is owned by the president of Nigeria. The Nation is owned by the president of Nigeria. So you think TVC is going to invite a critic to come and speak against the president? Now they will give us the resemblance of the fact that they are neutral. They want to report news, but you know that is not going to happen. So for me, I think it's high time the people, the drafters of journalism curriculum goes back to the drawing board, and began to take a look at what they are teaching and the reality, because a person who is in journalism school should know that their opinion, where are you going to work? Even when you start your own newspaper, let me now tell you where it gets tricky. Ben Shapiro is not working for anybody. He started Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro is a conservative. For him to get people to follow him, he has to continue to express conservative views. If not, so he won't have followers in this America.
Taiwo, I'm not cutting you short. I respect that opinion, but my fear is journalism happens to be slightly different because it comes with very strong principles, one of which is objectivity, that is fairness, neutrality. Now, with what you just described, don't you think that these news organizations do not only tarnish their image, but this is having a heavy toll on the principles of the profession? And we're looking at some point in the future when at the end of the day, journalism will have no grounds any longer, because how would you differentiate between journalism and political practice?
So can I ask you a question now?
Go right
So
ahead.
Mr. Deba is a thoroughbred. He went to school in Nigeria. He went to school in the US to practice journalism. Now, most of the people on YouTube now, most of those guys on YouTube who are making millions on YouTube, many of them are not trained. It's passion. It's not everybody that is talking. I don't know the training that Ben Shapiro has. Ben Shapiro's background is a lawyer and an author and a Jewish man who got into journalism. I don't know the training that I know that Pregayu, that's Dennis Prega, is a broadcaster. But you can't say that of so many people, who are online now, who are in the forefront of having conversations on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram. Are we getting it? I think it is high time we redefine this thing we call journalism. That is the truth. And so, because there is mainstream, people like Mr. Deba now who went to school, who are thoroughbred, who understands all the principles. There are guys who are looking for scoop. When I see, now, if I want to check a news in America now, in this our community, I check New American Magazine. If it is there, I know that he has done his background check for him to report anything there. If I want to see anything in Nigeria now, I'll go and check Punch. I'll check the traditional newspapers to see what they are reporting. Because Gislover can publish something, it might turn out not to be true. So what I'm saying in essence is that every trade must take into cognizance the reality of what is going on. Let me give you an example. If you are a foreign lawyer, you come to the US now, you need to do certification for you to be able to practice. But do you know now that some states like California, states like different states, they are now saying, okay, we want to do away with that certification. If you go to a law school, you should be able to practice because they see that there are states where they need lawyers. But because these lawyers are not able to do well in these exams, they are hindering them from having access to lawyers. So they are saying, okay, we need to do away with this whole idea. If somebody goes to law school, so they are going back to how law practice started. Are you getting it? In Wisconsin, in some states, they are doing it already. In Oregon, they are going back to how law started. So if you go to law school, you come out, you go and learn under a lawyer for 1 or 2 years, then you'll be certified because of what I've learned under the lawyer, right? So things are changing. And I think that all of that has to be taken into cognizance. I think it is tough these days, Ernest, for you to find a journalist that does not have opinion. It's very tough.
Okay, I got you. Looks like Danlette wants to chime in on that.
Sorry, let me just add, just clarify certain things. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, everything Taiwo said is being taught, in journalism school. You are taught about opinion. You are taught about, the environment that you report, like reporting in a communist environment. They will tell you, you are taught that in school. Reporting in a capitalist environment, you are taught that. Reporting in socialist environment. In fact, they tell you all kinds of journalism, But what we are saying is that, I believe that we are trying to bring up here is the way journalism has degenerated, especially here in the United States. Like you said, certain stories that you saw on Fox News will be different in CNN. And I will tell you, Fox News, when did Fox News start? And when did CNN start? So all this, like you said, probably in journalism school, we start, talking about this evolution in journalism. It's easy to do that because it's a trend. All this new journalism, they've come up, they are changing a lot of things. Sometimes you don't even have to go to journalism school. There was this lady in Nigeria that became Taiwo knows her. At the time, she was matching. She started. She's online, and she was matching the national newspapers. She was getting adverts, but I don't know how strong she is now.
Linda
Ikeji. What did you call her?
Linda Ikeji.
Linda Ikeji, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how journalism, has gone. But all these things they are being taught in school. But it's just that the way it is now, where you just come and you talk falsehood, and you call yourself a journalist. Falsehood, you know that this thing is propaganda. And you call that journalism. That's so there must be a separation. Whether it's liberal, whether it's
I agree with you.
conservative, there must be separation. And students in journalism school must also be learning from that. They should be taught that, oh, look at this publication, look at this publication, look at this television, look at this television, look at this. If you want news, investigative news, correct news these days, you just go to PBS, public radio station. They spend money, to do stories on both sides, whether it's conservative, whether it's liberal. They on both sides, they report very well, and we still have publications that are still reporting. They will say they are mainstream. They want those who call them mainstream want them to be extreme. They want them to be either left or right. No, you should be in the middle. You should be able to report, as it is, not, taking side and driving it as if it has to be like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Danlette, you wanted to chime in.
Can I quickly come in? Okay. I think that Mr. Deba has created a distinction, and it is important to pay attention to those distinctions. There's a difference between being ideologically inclined and being falsehood inclined. There are two different things. So you can still be ideologically inclined and do it with dignity and ensure that you follow the rule of truth. So I think that's the balance for me, right? That's the balance for me, and it's a major thing for me. Whether you are conservative or you are liberal or you are a centrist, let truth be your guide. Then you can still be a journalist that is, because the likes of Femi Ojudu, Bayo Onanuga is now serving this present government. They resigned from Concord because Chief M. Abiola wanted them to apologize to the military junta of the day because of a publication that they did, and their platform was shut down. And they said they were not going to apologize. They refused and resigned and went to start, their own platform. That was journalism, right? That is important to make that clarification in adopting Mr. Deba's view about the distinction between what we call ideological journalism and journalism of truth.
Perfect. Let's have Danlette come in here. Go ahead, Danlette.
Thank you. So I'll be responding to Mr. Tao's point about maybe
looks like we're having some issues with your sound, Danlette. You want to check that out?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Tao, to your point where the journalism godfathers need to go back to the drawing board or change where journalists should not have opinion. I would say no to that, because we can have opinions, but we just cannot express them publicly or when we are in the seat where we are reporting, if you're on radio or if you're reporting in a newspaper. Because I learned I was in my high school press club. I started in elementary, and we used to have professional journalists who would come on campus to teach us before we graduate in, high school and start professionally. And that was one of the first things that I learned, not to express our opinions publicly, because back then people had, or the public high value and respect for journalists. And so because of that, whatever we say on air, it was highly respected, because the profession, you have to be objective, you have to do your research, make sure your stories have the ABC elements. And so because of that, the public really, really respected journalists. So for that reason, we can have opinion on certain things. And so even after high school, when I went to journalism school and I started practicing professionally, it was something that I also learned again in journalism school, not to have our opinions. We have the right to vote and we have the right to have our opinions, but we also have that social responsibility not to express them, because we can be able to easily sway the public view. So, for example, when it's election season, where we have so many, like Liberia, we have so many different political parties, and we have those political leaders running for president or for representative and senators. And if I go on the air, or if I get my pen and my paper and start to write in favor of certain politician, and I have an audience that look up to me or that really admire the work that I do, and they read our paper or listen to my broadcast, they can easily think that I'm telling them what to do, and they can go, I can change their opinions, and they can easily go and vote thinking I'm in support of certain politician. So as of today, even my parents don't even know what political party I'm for. And when we had the election, even I was here, but we had the election back home in Liberia in 2023, we had two top candidates, Joseph Waka and George Weah, who was rerunning. And I remember my dad asking me, so who your owner person, who you supporting? I'm like, I don't know, nobody. So my parents don't even know who I support. But I know if I was there, I was going to go and secretly vote or privately vote, but nobody would know, because I don't want to sway the mindset of the public. I want the public out. If I have to report, I'll report on both parties. If they're having their convention or the campaign, I will go to both political parties' convention and I'll report both stories, but I will not have an opinion on it. And that's one of the reasons why now we see a lot of politicians will go and open media houses. We have a lot in Liberia. Even George, we have had his own radio station. A lot of politicians will do that, because when the media become objective, now they're like, okay, I got to open my own and find certain people in our profession that will be able to speak on my behalf. And when I was back home, I ran away from those kind of stations and media houses. I don't apply. If there is opportunity, I don't go for it, because I know I have that traditional journalism background. So I want to be objective, and I don't want to side with any politician. And so if you feel like, oh, you want to have an opinion publicly, that's fine. But I think those people, like Mr. Deba said, we can categorize them in a different area. Maybe they could just be political commentator, or just maybe contributor. But I wouldn't say they are journalists. I think journalists, we have to remain objective and be careful with the things we say, and keep our opinions to ourselves from within, not express.
Okay, the point has been made. Thank you so much, Grace. We are gradually but steadily moving to the end of this very beautiful conversation on press freedom, happening this day, May the 3rd, 2025, on a day when journalists in the United States of America joined their counterparts worldwide to commemorate World Press Freedom Day. I'm just going to ask Okon one brief question, and his answer is definitely going to be brief as well. Then we will come back and do the last round and look at the way forward. So, Okon, we've been talking about media outfits or journalists clearly taking sides. I want to know your experience out there. So does it mean that if there is an event, say the Democratic Party is organizing an event, and CNN journalists are there to cover, do we have journalists from Fox News come around to cover that same event as well? Same thing with the Republican Party. If they are having their event, do we only have journalists from Fox News come to cover and not CNN journalists? What do we see out there? Because as far as the analysis in the studio, are concerned, that is different. But I want to know what happens on the ground. Because if CNN clearly stays away from a Republican event, which is news, then that means they've even gone beyond just taking sides, but that at the end of the day should be something else and not journalism. So is that what obtains on the field?
So any newsworthy event, broadcast medias from different platforms will be present.
Okay.
whether it is whether it's Republican convention or Democratic convention, just like
Mhm.
sports. Because the majority of the things that I do is sports. You're gonna have different media um, houses that's gonna be there. So what that does, it shows your versatility to be able to cover the news. You could have one-sided opinion when you're reporting at a Democratic event. For example, Fox News, for example, they tend to everything about the Democratic Party event. They seem to be like never really in the middle. It's the same thing too when maybe CNN is covering a Republican event. So, but they are present where they will have opportunity to either fact check or interview a certain political figure. So, but it's the same thing with sports. On the ground is you have an opportunity to. So, if, for example, if I'm covering OSU, I will have opportunity to interview some a team that OSU is playing against, for example. So, I have to be uh, I have to be cautious on my approach because at the end of the day, I'm there to represent a particular school, right? If I'm there to represent University of Cincinnati, I have to make sure that I represent them to the fullest. But I will have opportunity to ask questions to um, whoever the opponent is that they're playing. So to really answer your question, doesn't matter what events it is, whether or not it's catered to more of a Republican event, a Democratic event, or conservative or liberal, you will have media houses from all across the platform that's going to be there.
Beautiful. Deba, Taiwo said a while ago that he would watch the same story being reported in different tastes by different media organs based on their inclination. But now, let's just get this straight. Say there is a Republican event taking place, and we have CNN covering it. Then there is Fox News covering it. That event had, say, 5,000 people attending, right? Five people made speeches. So is CNN going to report it differently and say there were 10,000 people in that event when there were only 2,000 people, or that nobody made a speech when five people made speeches? I just want to get that clear, because if it's about reporting, they are there, they've seen the same event happen, they've seen the same faces. Can't they just report what they've seen and heard? So what is this where is this disparity coming from?
Yeah, interestingly, honestly, they still report things that happen at events. If you look at uh, these different publications and all, or broadcasting houses, when something they take what is news at that event.
Mhm.
They take what is news at that event. Sometimes they are similar. Like you watch a football match, it ended, 21-17.
Mhm.
The headline, uh, Team A beats Team B. They still have that. It's only
Okay.
when they go into details, like you said, probably when there are certain things you need to fact check. For example, the president will say, "Oh, look at these people; they are up to 10,000."
Mm.
Okay, but you that you're on ground, you know that they are not more than 5,000, and so now you can say in your report, the president said, "Oh, look at these people; they are up to 10,000," but from what you see as a witness, they are about 5,000. So you are balancing it. You are fact checking. So that you will see in the publication of other side, that's other leaning, political leaning or ideology. Why in the publication of that supports the person that made that statement, probably the president, they will also said it's 10,000, even though they saw it as less than 10,000. And so, but when The stories are there. Oh, I'm going to stop tariff. I'm going to introduce tariff. That is news. And so you will find out that all the reporters will kind of, report the same. But it is when the analysis start coming in that they start, analyzing differently. But most times they report the news. That has not changed.
Okay, perfect. Now we're about to run off now, and we'll just look at this last perspective to run off. We just cannot talk about World Press Freedom Day today without talking about the new media, social media. Like Taiwo said, things are evolving, and we cannot be blind to that. That is fact. But let us bring this on board, and at the same time bring in journalism accountability. So, Taiwo, beginning with you, are we saying that with the new media, where things are evolving and a lot of people are having opinions, including journalists who definitely should not express their opinion in media spaces? So, are we saying that we should not consider accountability full-fledged, especially with the evolution of things when people own opinions? So does that mean that I will just share my opinion as a journalist, and whether it steps on somebody's toes, well, so be it. So how can we balance the new media and journalism accountability? Taiwo.
Well, life in itself panders to accountability. The book that I read says, he that has no rule over his spirit is like a city without walls. So you cannot live a life without accountability. If you don't have accountability, you are heading for the worst. And it's a matter of time. So in life, in marriage, in parenting, in everything that you do. So accountability is the rule of life. I mean, the Bible says in the multitude of counsel, there's safety. So you cannot live a life without accountability. You are just a god unto yourself. There's no faster way to crash. The same thing for when we talk about expressing yourself. There are views that, if I want to publish something, I may read it 10 times again and again and again, think about it, try to fact check it to be sure that what I'm writing is correct. Because you see, where your right to expression stops is where the right of another person to protect himself or herself starts. There's libel, there's slander, there's all of these things. In Nigeria, criminal prosecution is now weaponized as one of the consequences of publishing falsehood, right? So accountability is very, very important. But there's something I need to point out. I think that, we need to separate the role of the journalist when the writer is reporting a matter, or when the journalist is in a company where he's writing an op-ed. Are you getting it? Because when you are writing an op-ed, objectivity is what is important. Even when you want to I don't believe that a journalist is sentenced to a life of no opinion. I don't think so. I think that is taking it to the extreme. When we talk about objectivity does not mean no position. Objectivity means fairness, that you are fair to all parties. Now, so there's a guy in Nigeria who is publicizing one program now. I ran the report of the Punch today. The guy is saying people should pay a particular amount to come and do mentorship with him. And Punch published something that EFCC is frowning at the man, right? They now ended it. And the way they will normally end it, they say that every effort, all the numbers on the flyer, we reached out to it. We call the man. We call somebody who asked us to call somebody. Punch, as an established newspaper, you also see that in the New American Magazine, there's always an effort to reach the other side. To say this is what these people are saying. Somebody wanted Mr. Deba to publish a particular story. His own position is that we cannot publish your views except we reach out to the other people. We are not in the newspaper, Nigerian New American Magazine, to do hashed job, right? To say, okay, quickly let me write this. Because he is trained And that is training, gives him a sense of accountability. So I think wherever you are, whether you're on social media, whether you are in the mainstream media, whether you are in the people they call the legacy media, those guys on YouTube, they call CNN, Fox News, all of these guys, they call them the legacy media. Wherever you are, if you don't fact check yourself, hold yourself accountable, a time is coming when laws, the system, will hold you accountable. So accountability can never be jettisoned. If you know what you are doing, you have to know that you listen to both sides. You take time to fact check what you are writing. You check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Thank you so much, Deba. We'll come back to say bye to you. Okon, we are increasingly seeing mainstream media use social media space to propagate maybe their stance, and we also see how their audiences are helping them shape the narrative they want to drive across. Are you at some point holding some of this mainstream media that use social media space responsible for this extremist position, which the media is taking this? I really would not want to mention names, but we see how followers of this mainstream media on social media space, get so violent to a point where we are beginning to say, okay, looks like these mainstream media are gaslighters. Are you of that opinion as well, Okon?
So social media is good and bad at the same time. Um, I know Taiwo mentioned Ben Shapiro little while ago. He's actually a lawyer. But what he has been able to create using social media, for example, right, is conservative platform, the Daily Wire. There are so many different type of Daily Wire, either operated by Ben or operated by someone else. So they have used social media to really hurt the news. And believe it or not, a lot of people are rather look to see what he's posting compared to a local news, right? Um, so local news, for example, are going to tell you that those stories that is relatable, stories about not just someone passing away or families coming together or what the community leaders are doing um, to work together to prevent community crime. You're not going to see that in that kind of a platform. I'm talking about conservative platforms. So there's a difference is what they use social media for. So us as journalists, for example, I use social media to to put to advertise what I am reporting on. For example, coming back from the Final Four, I use social media, TikTok, X, Twitter, for example, to promote what I am covering. So I use it to the benefit of using different platform to tell the story of what we are doing. But there are those conservative media or even liberal that use it, that use or just the point I'm trying to make really quick is people they have they're not using social media to really um tell the news. They're using it for personal gain, and that's what it is. Obviously, the more viewership you get, you can monetize it. That's what it is. I can get on social media and preach nothing but faults. Next thing I know, I'm making a lot of money. I have a lot of followers, but everything I'm saying is nothing but a lie. So that's the negative side of it.
Beautiful. Oko, thank you so much. When we come back, we'll just be saying bye in a few seconds. Danlette, let me come back to you. You are one of those mainstream journalists who use social media as well, yet they understand the distinction between social media and mainstream journalism, which is great. Yet, Taiwo made a very important point that at some point uh, things need to be reviewed, and we may think that it's a joke, but the way the world is evolving, right? We are definitely getting to that point when Taiwo's accession will have its place. Do you at some point get scared that sometime down the road, mainstream journalism will gradually give way uh, to citizen journalism? Because we may think that the distance between now and then is wide, but when we see the way things are evolving, we are gradually but steadily getting there. Do you entertain those fears as well, Danlette?
Um, Bloggers, a lot of YouTubers, and at some point in time, we have to accept it, and then personally, we can just make our own judgment on what we would entertain and what we would publish as individuals, because we will have no control over it. It's already happening. At first, we were taught to to balance the story and do more research, more interviews. If it's something that involves more than one person, you have to talk to both parties. But now we see, stories are one-sided and people just give out their opinions. And this is the word of social media. Even though it's good, we can be able to get our points across easily and fast, very fast. But there are also good and bad of social media, and we have to take it as it is and just be objective as individuals on what we publish out there.
Well, thank you so much, Danlette. Our time is up. Just before we go away, just one last question, and we'll take just 10 seconds each. Um, Deba, do you still believe that journalism is a noble profession?
It is. I still believe that it's a noble profession, and also it's just for us to uh, reevaluate it and see how we can um, make it big again. Because social media had, affected, the level that it used to be before uh, the coming of social media. So it's now left for journalists to see how they can use this present environment to improve journalism.
Mhm. Deba, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. Do have a fantastic rest of the day. Taiwo, I know you are an evolutionarist and revolutionarist. What do you think journalists can do to maintain that noble profession status? I'm talking about mainstream journalists.
Well, I love something that Miss Washington said, which is the fact that I'm first a human being
Mm.
before I'm a journalist. And I think that I always like to look at things from the human angle. I'm first a person before I'm a crusader. Anything you do can be bastardized. Anything you do can be you can drive for the purpose of perversion. You want to drive to go and commit a crime. You can drive for the purpose of going to show love. So whatever we do, what comes first is our value as human beings. And I think that should what be in the forefront of whatever we do. So as we go on, as we celebrate today and we reminisce over this day, let's just try to be better people. If we are better people, we'll be better journalists. If we are ethical people, we'll be ethical journalists, right? So we pay attention to the way we lead our lives in our marriages, in our parenting, everything we do. As we get better as humans, we are going to get better in everything that we do. Because in neo-linguistic programming, they say the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So that is just the way I look at it. I strive daily to be a better person. That's my goal. I don't strive daily to be a better husband or a better parent or to be a better writer or a better freelancer. I just try to be a better person because I know that if I'm a better person, everything I'm doing will be better. And that would be my admonition, going forward to all of us. Let's strive to be better, right? As we get better, whatever we are doing gets better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okon, at the beginning of the show, I described you as a photo journalist. But then, nowadays, when you carry your camera, you have 200 other people attending the same events with their phones, and everybody is filming, including you. Do you entertain fears of being drowned by these 200 people holding their phones and filming and even sending their stories even before you do?
Listen, man, that camera that I have has been a blessing beyond wonders. When I go to a national event, I used to use my phone. I felt so embarrassed, but I feel like that I'm telling a story through lenses. Depending on, doesn't matter what it is, but so capturing photo has been an amazing for me because telling stories is not just words; it's also image, right? For example, during 2020, with all the protests going around across the world, everybody was reporting on the same thing, all the news media, but you had opportunity to capture photo of, for example, an older white man, for example, interacting with a younger black child in a very positive way, right? Those kind of image, it's not a photobomb, it's to show that compassion still exists. So for me, what I've learned, just being blessed to work with Deba and the rest of you guys, is you know what I went to school for is to tell stories, actually documentary, right? Because I was born in America, but I was blessed to actually was raised in Nigeria, and I've come into America. People always say, "Oh my God, Nigerian don't have this, don't have that," but I wanted to go and show people we do have what you said we don't have. So the ability to capture stories and tell stories from my own eyes has been a blessing, either whether or not I'm using a phone or writing or whatever it is. I just love telling stories. And so, yes, telling stories has been amazing. But at the end of the day, like Miss Washington say, I always have to make sure that my faith, family, and community value never goes away from me.
And lastly, Grace, when they created us, the fourth estate, they said our responsibility was to hold governments accountable. But today, the citizens on social media are holding governments accountable. Do you think we still have a job?
It doesn't matter what profession you're in, or you're supposed to hold the government accountable, because at the end of the day, it affects all of us. And so, even though journalists have that social responsibility, the public also does. So, the distinction is we go deeper, and we do more investigation. We put more time into writing stories and doing research and reporting those stories, and also educating the public about certain things that are going on within the government. So we all have that responsibility, and we as journalists, we have more tasks to do. So I don't think anything has been taken away from us.
Nothing has been taken away from journalists. The fourth estate is still there to hold the various arms of governments, including the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive accountable. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for coming. Deba, thank you so much. Happy Press Freedom Day.
Thank you very much, and happy Press Freedom Day too.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Taiwo, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Special thanks, Okon. And for those of you out there who were keen and listened to this conversation, it was a pleasure having you around. Thank you so much. We will be back again for yet another conversation, perhaps this time a different topic. But as of now, we want to say courage to all the journalists who belong to the fourth estate and, of course, are practicing mainstream journalism. The responsibility is still there. Do not fall back. Still hold governments accountable. Yet, you still have to be responsible as you practice the profession. Thank you so much. Marcel Adig was the producer of this special edition of Apex Snapshots, which came to you live from Phoenix in Arizona. My name is Ernest Kanjo. Do have a fantastic rest of the evening, and may God bless you. Bye for now.